Amstetten, Austria, spring of 2008. In a quiet town between rows of ordinary houses, an ambulance arrives at a nondescript home marked number 40. A young woman is rushed to the hospital, unconscious, in critical condition. The doctors don't know who she is. She has no ID. She doesn't exist in any system. And yet, she looks like she spent her entire life locked in the dark. A few hours later, a man arrives at the hospital. Gray-haired, well-kept. He claims the girl is his granddaughter, but his answers are evasive. Something doesn't add up. Police sense this is not a typical case, and what follows will forever change how Europe sees evil. Elisabeth Fritzl was born in 1935 in Austria. He grew up during and after the war, a time when authority meant power and silence was seen as virtue. He never spoke much of his childhood. His father abandoned the family. His mother was strict, cold, perhaps too much so. Maybe that's where it began. As an adult, he became a structural engineer, gained respect, married Rosemarie, and together they had 7 children. From the outside, it was a normal Austrian family. The father worked. The mother took care of the house. But behind closed doors, Josef ruled with an iron hand. His children feared him, especially one, Elisabeth. She was quiet, sensitive. She loved books, but as a child tried to spend as much time away from home as possible. Something about her father frightened her. She couldn't explain it, but she felt it. When Elisabeth turned 12, everything changed. Joseph began to treat her differently. Too close, strange touches, long looks. He isolated her from others. At 15, she ran away for the first time. Authorities found her after a few weeks, and following the norms of that time, they sent her back home, back to her father. Joseph was already planning. In the 1970s and 80s, he began building an elaborate set of rooms beneath the family home in Amstetten. Officially, a fallout shelter. But some rooms weren't on any blueprints, hidden behind false walls, secured by codes and magnetic locks. No one knew that beneath this ordinary house, a prison was being built. A concrete labyrinth with no windows, no sunlight. A cellar where a nightmare would unfold for the next 24 years. The Fritzl home, a quiet summer day. She was 18, the last of the children still living at home. On that day, August 28, 1984, the house was silent. Her mother was cooking. Siblings were away. Her father was in the basement. He called out calmly, "Elisabeth, come downstairs for a moment. I need help with a hatch." Nothing unusual. The house was old, the basement large. Elisabeth hesitated, but she was used to obeying. She walked down the cold concrete stairs. The air smelled of mildew and iron. There were new doors, heavy, steel. She'd never seen them before. She stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind her. She turned. Josef was standing in the doorway. He closed it, bolted it, without a word. His eyes were colder than she had ever seen. She stood frozen. The silence was absolute, the kind of silence you only know when the door closes and the key disappears. No one upstairs noticed anything. When she didn't return, her mother tried to stay calm. Maybe she spent the night with a friend. Maybe she needed space. The next day, she reported her missing. Josef stuck to his story. She was troubled, rebellious, talked about running away. And then, a letter arrived, neatly written, signed by Elisabeth. She claimed she joined a religious group, that she didn't want to be found. The handwriting matched. Police closed the case. Officially, she was gone by choice. Unofficially, she was a prisoner. In the dark, a few meters beneath her own bed, the space she was in wasn't just a cellar, it was another world. Low ceiling, bare concrete walls, artificial light from a flickering fluorescent bulb. No window, no fresh air, just silence. Not peaceful silence, but crushing. At first, she couldn't believe it. This had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding. Her father would explain. He would let her go. But instead, he brought food, then demands, then no more excuses. He raped her the first time, not the last. She tried to scream, but quickly learned no one could hear her. Above her were layers of concrete. The rooms were soundproofed, the locks sealed. Resistance led to punishment. Lights off for a full day. No food. Or worse, he stayed and watched her fear. That was his favorite part. He didn't become a monster overnight. It had always been there, waiting for a place with no witnesses. Months passed. Elisabeth broke down. She whispered to herself just to keep her voice alive, spoke to the walls, the light, the shadows, drew imaginary calendars on her hands so she wouldn't forget what time looked like. After 2 years, she became pregnant. She gave birth alone, on a thin mattress on the floor, in pain, in blood, with no medicine, no clean water. The baby cried, and the cycle began. No pediatrician, no formula, no doctor, only Joseph. He came when he wanted, then came the second child, then the third. Some of the children were taken upstairs, not out of mercy, but because Joseph needed to maintain the lie. He claimed they were abandoned, left at the doorstep. Attached were letters Elisabeth had to write under threat. His wife, Rosemarie, raised them lovingly. She never knew what was under her feet, that the cellar she walked past daily was a torture chamber for her own daughter. 3 children stayed below. They grew up in isolation. They never saw the sun, never felt wind, never touched a tree. Only walls, a low ceiling, and their mother shielding them. There were no toys, only scraps, bottle caps, rags, bits of cardboard. They learned to speak from Elisabeth. They learned to stay silent from Joseph. When they had fevers, she prayed they would pass. When they cried, she tried to quiet them before footsteps approached. One boy died shortly after birth. He couldn't breathe. Joseph took the body, never said where. Later, he admitted to burning it in the furnace. Time ceased to exist. Days were identical. Each began with a stare at an unchanging ceiling. Each ended in fear. Would Joseph come today? And if so, what would he do? Elisabeth wrote when she could, on boxes, wrappers, scraps, not to leave messages, but to hold on to herself. She wrote to remember she existed, that she had thoughts, that she had will. But the cellar tried to take even that. Life underground became routine, horrific but ordinary. And that was the worst part. She stopped crying, learned to fake calm so the children wouldn't panic, learned to look into his eyes without breaking. Until one day, he made a mistake. Kirsten was the oldest of the underground children, born there, raised there, quiet, gentle, strong, despite everything. Then she started to collapse. At first, Elisabeth thought it was a fever. Then Kirsten began convulsing, foaming at the mouth, falling unconscious, her body twisted in pain. Elisabeth begged, not for herself, but for her daughter. Joseph looked at the child writhing on the floor and hesitated. For the first time in 24 years, he hesitated. He needed help, but help meant questions. He was used to lying. But this was different. Kirsten's body told another story. Malnutrition, deformities, unknown illnesses. She was a living contradiction. He took her, dressed her, carried her, drove her to the hospital. He told the doctors he was her grandfather, that she was left on his doorstep. But something was off. Kirsten wasn't in any system. Her condition was so unusual, so alarming, that the hospital contacted police. Joseph left, calmly, as if he still controlled the outcome. 2 days later, detectives came knocking. They wanted to talk to the mother. Joseph stalled, then returned with another letter. Another lie. But this time it didn't work. He was nervous, and that was a mistake. Even those who had known him forever began to doubt. Elisabeth knew the moment had come. He came to her not with orders, but with a request. Come with me, to the hospital, just for a moment. Say nothing. After 24 years, she had a chance, not to run, but to speak. She agreed. She walked up the stairs. Each step hurt. Her body was weak, her eyes not ready for the light, but she didn't fall. At the hospital, they separated her from Joseph. And there, behind closed doors, she told the truth. All of it. Every year, every child, every scream and every silence. The investigators said nothing. The doctors cried. No one was ready for what they heard. That same day, police stormed the house, went down the hallway, descended into the basement. And what they found, they would never forget. Joseph was arrested without resistance. In the interrogation room, he was calm, still used to control, but it was no longer his. He sat at the table, staring at the detectives as if enduring a formality. Then they read him Elisabeth's statement, word by word, and in his eyes appeared, for the first time, confusion. He broke and began to speak. He confessed everything. Rape, enslavement, 7 children, 1 dead. He explained it all in the logic he created for himself. He gave her a chance to survive. He had to do it. He knew what he was doing. As if he didn't realize this was the end. Not a negotiation, not a next phase, but the end of the empire he built for himself. In 2009, he stood trial. He was charged with rape, imprisonment, incest, enslavement, and negligent homicide. He let a child die by refusing medical care. The trial lasted 4 days. Elisabeth testified from behind a screen. When she spoke, no one in the courtroom breathed. No film, no book. Nothing could match it. Elisabeth Fritzl was sentenced to life in prison. He is now held in a facility for the criminally insane. Nameless, familyless, powerless. The house in Amstetten was soon abandoned, the cellar sealed with concrete. No one wanted to walk past it again. Elisabeth and her children were given new identities, a new home. But trauma doesn't move out with a change of address. They learned to go outside, to breathe fresh air, to not flinch at every key turning in a lock. They discovered things others take for granted: the color of the sky, the feeling of grass, the sound of wind. And the world? The world learned that evil doesn't always have wild eyes and foam at the mouth. Sometimes it wears a buttoned shirt, carries house keys, greets the neighbors. Sometimes it looks ordinary. And that is the scariest part of all. Beneath a normal house, behind a regular door, in a world where no one noticed someone disappeared for 24 years. What would you have done in her place? Can you even imagine surviving something like this? Let me know what you think in the comments. That's all for tonight. Stay safe. I'll see you next week.